Hi, Tony Hygo here. I wanted to talk to you about a social media post that I saw a few days ago, and it was asking which position, what's the best position for your elbow to be in when you're throwing a punch. Now, presumably, the chap was talking about a straight punch, so let's focus on that. And I think it's a good question. And there are some interesting answers that came up, including links to other YouTube videos of Joe Lewis and people like that. Some comments made sense and some didn't. And I realized that there is a lot of misinformation around on punching power. And one post said that the elbows are not important and that only the hips created punching power. Others said the elbows should be close to the body, and others said they should be out. One of the problems we've got with the martial arts, though, is that practitioners seek to prove right what they've been taught rather than examine what they do and how right that is. In my opinion, we're not really martial artists in many cases. We're basically religious fundamentalists. It's true. I mean, we treat our style like our religion, and that holds us back, very far back. What we must do is look at the martial arts for what they are, and that is physics. The martial arts are comprised of two things, physics and philosophy. Physics is what we do, and philosophy is why we do it. You can apply that to your entire life, but let's focus on martial arts. If we leave the idea of philosophy for the moment, we can focus on the physics. And physics is about efficiency. And the martial arts too often focuses away from efficiency and onto tradition. And what that means is we do things the same way as we were taught, and we don't change the way that we were taught because we feel that our master, our instructor, was completely right. And that's unlikely, because for that to happen, he must have had a perfect understanding of what he was doing. And nobody has that. For instance, in 1900, in the field of physics, there was a consensus that said there was nothing new to learn, that you could stop the study of physics because it was all known, and that Newtonian physics, that's Sir Isaac Newton, Newtonian physics had set the bar, and that was it. But then in 1905, 1906 came a guy called Albert Einstein who turned physics on its head. And without his breakthroughs, there would be no quantum physics. Well, who cares about quantum physics? Well, quantum physics is important because without quantum physics, there's no iPhone, no laptops, no internet, no space travel, no TVs, nothing that we take for granted in our modern world. And I think that too many martial artists are like some of those physicists in the early 1900s, and they think that everything has been learned and that we should look backwards to the past instead of forwards to understand better what we do. From my view and my 50 plus years experience in the martial arts, I seek to find the most efficient way to use my martial arts. My philosophy is to find the most efficient way to move, punch, kick, and so on. So where does this leave us in terms of this elbow question? Well, let's take a closer look at how I would answer that question. If you think about this, what are we trying to create in a punch? And we're trying to create enough force to damage or disable our opponent. Is that right? So what creates force? Well, Newton's equation says that force equals mass times acceleration. This is Newton's second law of motion. This means that the faster a mass travels, the more force is created. And for our purposes, mass is weight, body weight on this planet. Also, another useful equation that helps in our terms is the equation for kinetic energy. Because basically kinetic energy is movement energy, and we're creating movement and creating energy. And the formula for that is KE, kinetic energy, equals half mass times velocity squared. What does that mean? Well, like Newton's equation, it means that the faster you go, the more force you create. So are you with me so far? So the faster we go, the more force we create. So if you want to create more force, in other words, power, you should focus on creating more speed. Well, how do you create speed? Well, there are several ways, and I've only got a few minutes to talk to you here, so I'm going to just cover a few that'll give you an idea. Well, the first thing you can do is to improve the movement, what the guys in functional movement called greasing the groove. That's through high repetition. You practice the movement over and over and over, and the muscles and the body gets to understand what is required of the movement, and it gets better at doing that movement. The next thing is to learn how to manage your distance so that you're always at the best distance to create the best contact with the target. Think here of punching through the target, if that makes sense. The next thing is to improve your timing. And timing and distance are very, very closely linked. In fact, in physics, quantum physics, they talk about space-time, not just timing separately to space, and space is distance. So space-time, they're very closely connected. And timing comes also through repetition. And from our point of view, we want repetition on different targets. Stationary targets at first, then moving targets, light targets, heavy targets, and so on. So that you build an instinctive understanding of the right time, cadence, rhythm, beats, in Japanese ma. The right time and the right distance are crucial to creating force, which is power, okay? Next, you need to build strength. And in the martial arts, we need explosive strength, which means fast strength. So you should focus on drills and exercises which improve this function. Are you still with me? The final thing is to examine the function, and this is connected to the number one, improving the movement that we talked about. There are two parts to our training, and those are practice, which is to repeat a movement over and over, as we mentioned in step one, with a view to improving the movement. But this is no good on its own. It needs the second thing, which is study. And study is the act of questioning and judging the practice. It's no good doing millions of reps if they're all wrong. And frankly, there are too many martial artists that are doing this. And this is like stacking the deck chairs while the ship sinks. You have to focus on what is the most important thing. And in martial arts, the most important thing is efficiency. Getting the job done with the least amount of effort. So to summarize, the question was, where should my elbow be on a punch? Well, it's a valid question, but in order to understand the answer, we must test which elbow position creates the most force for the least energy. Here's a little tip. Think of the punch as a fast push. If you want to push, you need leverage. So let's take a common push and examine the leverage that we create, because the leverage creates the force creates the speed creates the power. Let's look at the push-up. How do we do a push-up? Well, try it for yourself. Experiment with this. Try elbows out, elbows tucked in, elbows toward the head, higher, elbows toward the body, lower, hands close, hands distant. Which one of these variations allows you to produce the most force? And by that, I mean which one allows you to do the most reps. Does that make sense? So try it and find out where the best place for your elbow should be. Then try punching with your elbow in the same position as the best press-up position and see if it improves your power. Then you'll be able to answer the question on your own, because a straight punch is basically a fast push done with one arm. So try it. Do the press-up test and then try it as a punch. Put your elbow in exactly the same position and see what effect that has on the punch. Kelly Starrett and Gray Cook are two functional movement experts that I follow a lot, and they've taught me a lot about martial arts without ever mentioning martial arts. And they're leading lights in the functional movement world, and they talk about the press archetype, which is basically the press position, either press up or press forward, and that's basically where your hands should be to get the best out of a punch. You'll find this, it's the same press position that you do in a press-up. And I recommend that you read both of their books, Kellis directs the Becoming a Supple Leopard, and Gray Cook on Improving Movement. Can't remember exact title of his book, but I've read both of these 3 or 4 times, and I intend to read them again because they're very, very valuable for martial arts and martial artists, and they'll help you to better understand your martial arts. So I've given you here a very simple example. If you'd like more detail, message me and I'll try to help. But my advice is this: study what you practice, ask questions about what you're practicing, experiment, and keep in mind that the key focus of the martial arts should be efficiency. And if you'd like more details on this, just let me know. I'm Tony Hygo. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more on the martial arts. See you later.